couple quick things about me and about today and how it's going to work, because we have a lot of material to cover in about 3.5 hours, basically. If I'm going much too fast, tell me, say slow down, say something. The other thing is ask questions along the way. The main idea of doing this in this format is, yeah, I do have an agenda, I do have stuff to go through, but if we don't get through it all and we ask and answer some really good questions instead, I'm totally okay with that. So as far as format, I broke the afternoon into 4 different sections. The first one is kind of a general introduction. What is social media? But don't worry, I'm not going to talk about engagement and things like that. How to actually do it. What's the things you have to do to work in social media. Some tips and tricks, as well as a way of managing your time when you're doing and handling social media. And then some things that your mom never told you about social media that are just hard lessons that I've learned over time, or I've learned at other people's expense, which is even funnier and sometimes really fun to talk about. So we'll go over some of those at the very end. The other thing is that this is about social media for business. All right, I'm not going to talk about personal social media. So we're not going to talk about how to get lots of people to respond when you post what you just ate. That's not going to happen. You can do that. That's perfectly okay. It's not a bad way to build an audience, actually, and obviously I occasionally post about something I ate. But I'm not going to talk about it today. I will not use any Mad Men analogies. I love the show, but it's been done to death. So there will be no Mad Men analogies in this. All done with that. And I'm not going to talk about blogging. Blogging is a whole separate thing at this point. And blogging is not really social media. Blogging is content management, and I'm not going to go into the long discussion of why it drives me crazy that people call it social media. Everything we're going to talk about today is what you do to build an audience around you, your brand, your product, or things you write and publish on your blog. So it's perfectly reasonable to think about blogging as we're doing this. If you have questions about how blogging fits into this, that's great, but I'm not going to teach you how to launch a blog today. That would take another 4 hours, and I don't really want to go there. So what is social media? Quick question first, actually. How many people here have personal Facebook pages? Just about everybody. I think everybody. Okay. No, not everybody. Okay. How many people here have a Twitter account? You don't have to tell me whether you use it or not. That's okay. How many people here are on LinkedIn? Ah, that's interesting. Okay, well, we will talk about LinkedIn too, so that's cool. So social media is incredibly overly hyped. If you look at the numbers behind social media, the revenue it generates directly, the ability of social media to retain interested customers, to generate interest for a business, it is so overly hyped, it's incredible. Okay, it would be like building this enormous ship, putting it in the ocean, driving it 3 times faster than you should, and bragging constantly about how unsinkable it is. Not that anyone would ever do that, but that's basically what it's like. Compared to something like pay-per-click advertising, Google AdWords, or even renting an email list, it's a tiny little bug in the world of internet marketing. It just doesn't make very much happen. So now you're wondering, wait, I paid in for this? What the heck? Why am I here? I'm not telling you it's worthless. In fact, I'm going to tell you it's the exact opposite. It's really cool. But first, it's nothing new. Okay? Social media has been around since we could hit each other with sticks and complain to someone else about it. Right? Someone bonked someone else on the head. That one person went to 2 other people and told them, and then they went that. That's social media. There's no such thing as anti-social media. And I made up that phrase. There's a lot of other people who use it, but I made up anti-social media. What social media is very scalable, first of all. It's massive, right? If you post a message, there's a potential for many, many people to see that message. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. That's led a lot of companies and a lot of the people who go out and talk about social media and a lot of the marketing firms that use it to treat it like a traditional mass marketing broadcast medium. Build as big an audience as possible and then just push out one post after another on Facebook, one post after another on Twitter, just pushing their product. And that's what most of them are doing at this point. There's a few of the really big brands like Coca-Cola are starting, they get it now. But if you look at a typical page for most car manufacturers at this point, a lot of bigger travel companies, and a big chunk of the fashion world, it's all about me, me, me. They're not really engaging in that conversation yet. So they're just pushing media out there. And that's a big mistake, and it's a fundamental one. And for big businesses, it means that they try to build a huge following, and then they shut down all their social media when it doesn't generate a return on investment within 6 months. And it means that for small businesses, you tend to give up because you think, everybody says, oh, there's 800 million people on Facebook. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, but if you're a small business trying to get attention, it's kind of daunting, right? How can you be heard over 800 million people? That's hopeless. But you don't have to shout down everyone. Okay, the whole point of social media is really what it is talking. All right, social media is talking. That's all it is. All right, it's people, me right here, right now. This is sort of social media. If you're at a party talking to people, that is social media. You just have to find the one person who needs your help right then and there, or the one person who you can have a meaningful conversation with at that point in time. So social media is just talking, and talking is not new. Social media is all about scaled conversations, and this is the new part. With the internet, the scale of social media is massive, right? Previously, even with TV or with, actually TV is a bad example, but with print advertising and things like that, if you put a message out there, it would show for whoever was within eyeshot of that particular ad, and that's it. And there's really no good way to spread it around, right? If I see an ad and I love it, I can take the magazine and show it to other people. I can talk about it. I can't pass it along. The other thing about social media is that it's persistent. And this is another big, important part, and this is where it differs from television in a lot of ways. Even if television could work in two directions, you see an ad on TV, and it's gone. You drive by a billboard, and it's gone. You hear someone give a pitch in person, and it's over. In social media, whatever you post stays there forever, which is what I was just talking about a minute ago. But now, if you have one of these meaningful conversations with someone where you're just talking to them, and you've got that massive scale, it's not like you have to hit that massive audience right then and there. All you have to do is stick around, which you do. Your message is there, like I said, for better or for worse, forever. And then the last and most important part of this, and the reason that I think social media is so important for smaller businesses as well as big ones that are just intelligent about their budgets, social media is what I call earned media. Okay, there's purchased media, where you buy time on TV, you buy ads on Google, you know, one way or another, you're paying directly for time and representation in front of people. And then there's earned media. And earned media is something that you get because people decide they want to listen to you. And earned media really costs time. So if you have, in the time versus money equation, social media is very powerful because where a lot of forms of advertising require lots of money and very little time, social media requires time and very little money. Now, that scares a lot of people too. Nobody has time for anything, and social media is a notorious time suck. On the way here, there was a show on NPR about America's obesity epidemic and how the whole country is going to keel over. But one of the things that really struck me is they said the average child between the age of 5 and 13 spends 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen. And I'm willing to bet most of that is not television. Most of that is Facebook or the internet or YouTube or whatever else. But I'm going to show you how to manage the time, so don't freak out about the time. So how does this all generate business for you? How does someone actually get business? And I'm going to have an example business that I'm going to walk through throughout this entire presentation today. It's a bike shop. When I retire someday, it's going to be a toss-up whether I open a gaming store or a bike shop. And this bike shop, I have this mechanic named Frank. And Frank is on Facebook, and somebody says, I have this tire. I cannot get this stupid tire on my bicycle's rim. It's too tight, which is something I went through a few weeks ago. My thumbs are just now healing. Actually, literally, I actually gave myself blisters trying to push the stupid tire on. So Frank comes along and gives someone great advice about this tire. Now, Frank may be in a completely different city. My bike shop's in Seattle. The person with the tire problem is in Manhattan. So it seems like a waste of time. And maybe I go and I yell at Frank because he should have been changing tires, not writing about how to change them. But actually, it works out okay because this person goes and thanks Frank. And of course, the message that he writes about it shows up on his wall on Facebook, but it also shows up for all of that person's friends. And then if any of those friends like that message, it shows up for all of their friends and so on. And it passes to this incredibly large audience very quickly. And then if somebody in Seattle who knows a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of the guy who spoke to Frank sees that message right when they need tires, they're going to go and make a purchase. And in fact, even if it's a week later or a year later, or in an example I'll give later for Portent, 2 years later, that someone finds a message that I posted somewhere and they like it, that can lead to a sale and a customer. So the way social media and the way most earned media works for business is not that it's going to generate sales that you can directly track within a few minutes of an interaction. Social media earns media over time. It's earned media over time. And it can keep scaling, right? Every one-on-one interaction has the potential to generate many, many sales. It's not going to happen every time. In fact, it happens maybe 1 out of 200 to 300 to 400 times, but it does happen. So that's how social media is actually going to work. And the reason it works is because you can be that one person giving advice, but your message can be replicated 1,000 times. And yes, I am going to beat that one absolutely to death today, just so you know, because it's a big part of the time investment. The thing that I'm going to go over a lot today is this 10-5-10 method, which is 10 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes every 90 minutes, and then 10 minutes at the end of the day. And it's important to keep in mind when you're putting in that time that any one message that, yeah, you have a 1 in 1,000 shot of each of your messages doing something profound, but when it does, it's going to repeat to many, many, many people. It's going to happen many times over. I'm just curious, how many people here know me through social media first? Probably not very many, but just one? Okay, well, still. That's less. That's better than 1 in 1,000. Win. So just keep these 3 words in mind. Earned, scaled, and persistent. That is social media. Earned, scaled, and persistent. It's got all the perfect properties for a business that either can't invest a ton of money in marketing or has a huge marketing budget but needs another way to contact its customers, a more authentic, believable way, because social media does carry that kind of air of authenticity with it, although why, I don't know at this point, but it does. So the 2 rules, and I'm also going to beat these to death this afternoon. First of all, you don't have to natter to millions. That's natter with an N. You don't have to just go blah, 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 to millions and millions of people. That is not the objective in social media. You can find lots of programs and software, and you can find lots of people on a website called Fiverr or in India or wherever who will say that they will get you 5,000 followers overnight. That's great. They got you 5,000 followers overnight. Those people probably haven't been on Twitter or on Facebook in 3 years. Half of them probably aren't even real. So quantity is not the winning factor here. In fact, it's not even close. So you don't have to natter, and you don't want to natter to millions. You want to matter to one person. Get it? See, there's an atom there. Matter. It's a joke. Sorry. It's Friday. You have to matter to one person at the right time when they really need you, and when they need your help, or when they happen to think you're funny, or they just like something you posted. But you must matter. Okay? If you don't matter, then the number of people you have in your audience will not affect the outcome of your campaign. No, go ahead.
Dumb question on my part. Frank gave me an awesome tip about better tires. I see that on my Facebook feed, and I go, I'm not interested in tires this week. 3 weeks go by. I'm not going to remember that, Frank.
No, then yeah, that's...
How does the time thing work when it's not up anymore?
That opportunity probably just passed by in most cases, particularly because Facebook has one of the worst search tools on the planet, considering that they have billions of dollars. Why they can't, I don't know, just take the search from Microsoft Word or something and slap it in there. But their search tool is terrible. Some results from Facebook and Twitter do show up in Google search results, so that can help, and in Bing search results. But for the most part, if it doesn't work out right then and there, unless you're dealing with an obsessively organized person who saves things that they find interesting for later, you probably lost the opportunity there, unless they saw that once and then a day later they see a paid ad for that same company because that company showed up in their stream on their wall, and Facebook has contextual advertising. So if my bicycle shop is advertising and it's very inexpensive on Facebook, then my ad may show up there. So it's one contact among many. It's one channel among many. It just the old advertising credo, you have to get the message in front of people 3 times. It's the first of the 3 times. So the whole trick is to matter, because if you matter, you end up in this situation where your message is earned, scaled, and persistent. It's not just the social media is. A lot of people say, well, this person's really famous on social media. How do they do that? Well, it's a simple 2-step process, okay, to become the famous social media person. First of all, be a famous star. And then second, start using social media. All right? People talk about, Ashton Kutcher got 20 million followers 2 hours after he signed on to Twitter. That's because he's Ashton Kutcher. No one can trip over a couch like that guy. That is not us. All right, and that is not what we need. It's not even what we want. It's too hard to maintain. The thing to keep in mind here again, it's just talking. That's all social media is, and you really, really have to matter. It's very, very important. Keep those 2 things in mind the entire time. When you post something to social media, if you answer someone, you really need to ask yourself the question, okay, does this matter? Am I going to provide them with something useful? And something I'm always talking about at Portent is the difference between knowledge and information. Am I just passing along a fact? The dodo bird is extinct. Or am I actually passing along knowledge, an explanation of how we think that happened, or the possibility that maybe there's still a couple flapping around somewhere, or something like that. You matter if you give someone a laugh, if you make them think, if you give them a valuable answer, if you help them with something right then and there, if you connect them with someone else, right? Anything that can be of service to someone genuinely and is meant to be of service to someone, and that's really important. You have to want to matter, okay? You can't go out there and say, okay, I'm going to answer all these questions. I'm going to answer 500 questions today because that way I know there's a chance that one of those 500 people will become a customer. If you start doing it that way, the problem that I found is it changes from something that feels worth doing to a chore, which is where social media typically falls apart. Because that's where it ends up getting assigned to whoever the absolute lowest person is on the food chain at the company. And 2 years later, you find out that they accidentally posted things about the drinks they just had or whatever else to the wrong Twitter account, which we'll talk about under the hard lessons at the end. Okay, so getting down to the meat of this. First thing you have to do in social media is you do have to set goals. So I was just talking about how I probably sounded kind of wishy-washy and rainbows and unicorns there for a second, saying, it shouldn't be a job. It is still a job. You have to set some goals. Just don't set goals. Don't set goals that are based on metrics that don't matter in social media. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. First thing you have to understand is, in real life, I'm a classic introvert, right? I mean, you put me in front of a room full of people, I'm fine. If you put me in a party where there's always those knots of people, I'm inevitably the one who ends up bouncing around between them, trying to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to be doing. And it's so funny to me because all the normal people, all the people who I'm looking at parties like, you're having fun here. How the hell are you doing that? They get into social media and they become the introverts. And they start saying things to me like, I don't know anyone. How am I going to talk to anyone? I can't just break into a conversation. I feel ridiculous. And the thing I always point out to them is, you cannot possibly be more ridiculous than the people who are already in social media. All right, these are the jackass guys. And I wasn't going to put this picture up because it looked like this guy's being seriously injured until I realized he's standing on roller skates. So really, I don't care how seriously injured he's getting. That is ridiculous, okay? And that's not even that ridiculous on the level of what you see sometimes in social media. So part of it is I just wouldn't worry too much about feeling ridiculous. Part of it is, social media is the only environment where, not the only, but it's one of the unique environments where you can have very in-depth communications with people without ever seeing them, which should, get rid of a lot of that fear. And you shouldn't be worrying about quantity. You shouldn't be worrying about getting lots and lots of followers. So, just like at the party where you see the person who has 50 people around them all laughing at everything they say, and you're just like, whatever. That doesn't matter. Right? Good example. On Twitter, I had someone retweet a blog post of mine about 6 months ago, and he had 53,000 followers. And I just thought, oh, this is amazing. I better go check our server and make sure it's still working. 53. Do you know how many people clicked his retweet of what I posted? 2. 2 out of 54,000. So lots of followers doesn't necessarily matter. There's all these systems out there that score how popular you are. Clout is one of them. And there was a great article in Wired magazine this month about Clout. If you get Wired, or if you're going to get a copy of Wired at some point, read this article, because there's a story in there of one of the best social media marketers in the country did not get hired because his Clout score wasn't as high as someone else vying for the same job. Clout is this scoring system where you connect it to your Twitter account and your Facebook account and everything, and it tracks how people respond to you and how many people respond, and then it gives you a score. And then you can go and compare yourself to see how lame you are compared to the rest of the internet. It's great. It's like junior high school, but everybody has numbers on their chests. It's awesome. It's awesome. So you want your goals to build on the things that are unique about social media. You want them to be attainable and sustainable, meaning you can progress towards them in a measurable way, and you can capitalize on the fact that it's earned, scaled, and persistent. So don't set goals for yourself that are impossible. And please don't set goals for your agency that are impossible. We don't like that. If you say, we have 500 followers right now, we want 50,000 by the end of 2 months from now, if we're smart and we're not too hard up for business, we're probably just going to walk. And if we are really hard up for business, we're going to stay for the 2 months knowing fully well you're going to fire us, because we can't make that happen. So goals for me when I go to a party, just sticking with the introvert thing. I set very limited goals. Don't break wind, don't pass out. Those are pretty much my goals when I go to a large party. If I can get through the party with neither of those things happening, it's usually a win. There's usually someone at the party who remembers me positively, who I can talk to later if I want to. I'm married and have kids now, so I figure I can talk about all this stuff because I've fulfilled all my biological requirements. Goals that I like to set for people who are starting out in social media, whether you're a small business or you're one person at a really, really large business. Things like answer 1 question per day, or 2 questions or 5 questions, whatever you want to set it at. And that means actually going out and finding someone with a question and answering it for them, whatever that question may be. Every day, I'm out on Twitter and a site called Quora, LinkedIn, and sometimes on Facebook, looking for folks, first who I know, who are asking questions about marketing, and then people I don't know. And then if it's not about marketing, I might look for cycling or science fiction movies or something like that. Something like post 3 really useful links to other stuff, not my stuff, to other people's stuff per day. This is called content curation, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes too. Find 2 interesting new people to follow each day. And they could be famous people or people that nobody else knows. Join 1 conversation per day. I used to set a goal like this at parties for me, and I threw it right out the window. It didn't work. In social media, you can move around that virtual room, right? You can find a conversation where you can then sort of gently insert yourself into the conversation and talk to people and see if you have something to offer, or if everybody's just riffing on something and being really funny about it, you can jump in, whatever. So just join 1 per day. So you take those goals. Pick at least 2 of these, by the way, before you leave today, and set a quantity for yourself. And you take 2 of these goals, and this is going to become the guiding principle for the first at least 3 months that you're doing social media. All right? Don't look at whether you're getting leads. Don't look at whether you're attracting more followers. And I don't care how many followers you have right now. Okay? If you have 500 friends on Facebook, or 500 fans of your page, or 50,000 followers on Twitter, don't worry about increasing that number. Focus on these goals. And if it's too easy, you can raise them a little bit. There's nothing wrong with it being easy, though. It doesn't have to be difficult. All these outlets, they seem very different. And in fact, it can seem very difficult to manage more than one of them at a time. One of the things I'll talk about after the break is some tools that let you post to and respond to stuff on multiple networks at the same time. So if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, that's fine. If you're on Pinterest and LinkedIn and Twitter, that's fine, or whatever. I will say, Facebook is kind of the biggest game in town, and there's almost no business that can't benefit from being on Facebook. So yes, I will talk about Facebook a lot, but you can really use any of these, any social network out there and apply this. And in fact, if there's a niche network out there, one that's just for your industry that we don't even know the name of, that might be a good place to go as well. Tish had a question, and then I'll...
Is commenting on posts the same thing as entering into a conversation?
Yes, commenting on blog posts. This is the one place where blogging really does apply to social media. Commenting on blog posts definitely counts. And it's interesting because that was spammed a lot for a long time. If anyone here owns a blog, you've probably gotten lots of comments from people saying, this is good post, very much thank you, or it sounds like Yoda just wrote a comment to you or something. Those aren't even human beings. Those are just computer programs that are just spamming comments out there, and there's some reasons for doing that that I can talk about later if you want. But a good comment on a blog is invaluable to everyone, and it is a great way to contribute to a conversation. You can also comment on a Facebook post, because some people or a Google Plus post. Some people use Google Plus or Facebook as their blog. So they may have big posts on there. But that's a great way to join a conversation. There was one here, I think.
I'm wondering how, what are some guidelines for keeping your personal Facebook and your...
Separate.
Yes.
The big thing is that I'm going to talk about using Facebook pages, which are specifically for business, to handle your business communications. I'm not really going to talk about personal Facebook at all. Whenever you send out a message on Facebook, you can create groups of people and say who you want these things to go to. And in your privacy settings, you can specify which messages go to who. So that's how you would do it. But I actually split them up completely. So I have a page over here that's my business, and then my personal account over here. So the next question is, where do you go? Because there's all these social networks out there. There are millions of social networks. A lot of brands seem to still think that they want to create their own social networks. They don't actually go where there's 800 million people. They want to go somewhere else and put in all the work required to attract 800 million people to their own website when they're all over on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever. You don't want to be engaged on every social network out there, or even every major one, unless you do this for a living. Okay, I do this for a living. I have a Pinterest board. I have an account on Quora. I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook account. I have an account on a site called Plurk, which I thought had died, but it's apparently making a comeback. I think at last count, somewhere around 24 different social media accounts on different websites. You don't want to go there. You want to be on 2, 1, maybe 3 at most. And I'm going to show you a way of structuring it so that it doesn't feel like you're really managing 3. So the first obvious one is Facebook. This is David Tennant. He was, if you're into this kind of trivia, he was previously Doctor Who. Now he's doing Hamlet. So apparently cheesy science fiction does have value for actors' careers. But Facebook is obviously the big one. 800 million users. 50% of those 800 million log in every day. That just blows me away. That's a level of engagement that, McDonald's doesn't get that level of engagement. That's incredible. Most preteens who use Facebook check Facebook before they get out of bed. The users tend to be both consumers and businesses. There are people using Facebook for work. There are people using Facebook for fun. And it's sort of like a gigantic trade show. We used to do trade shows. We're about to start doing them again, hoping with better results. But we used to do them, and the only clients we would ever get would be the other exhibitors. That's kind of what Facebook is too, but with Facebook, there's 50 or 60 or 70 million other people using Facebook for business, other people with business pages. So it doesn't really matter if you're all there just marketing to each other. It's such a huge audience, it doesn't matter. It's also the broadest demographic. Right, you've got from age 13 all the way up to age 85. The average age on Facebook now is close to 45 or 50, I believe, at this point, which just about fits the population as well. So it's the most diverse. There's Twitter. Most people are still trying to figure out what the hell Twitter is for. It is a gigantic chat room. That is all Twitter is. And my first message to you is, unless you are a marketer, a sports person of any kind, or a really hardcore geek, you probably do not need to be on Twitter. Those are the only audiences I've ever seen really get huge follow, or a movie star, some just huge personality. Those all seem to do really well on Twitter. If you're just an individual, go ahead, get on Twitter, follow some people, see what it says. The chances of you actually interacting with potential customers on Twitter is much lower. I've gotten more clients for Portent on every other social media outlet we've ever used than on Twitter, because on Twitter we've gotten one. It's fun, though, so I keep doing it. So 225 million active users, which next to Facebook seems kind of small. That's still a lot of people. That's almost one full United States of people. 25% of them log on every day. A lot of consumers and a lot of businesses. The downside is, yes, they do have Charlie Sheen. That's where he spends most of his social media time. But there are a lot of famous people on there. LinkedIn. This is a must for anyone in business. It's also the lowest maintenance unless you really want to go and really explode it as a tool for you. LinkedIn has 135 million, but almost 50% of them have household incomes over $100,000. It's kind of interesting because that's a very narrow demographic, and it's completely the opposite of all other social media outlets. If I go on Twitter and I post that I've got an ebook on sale for $7, do you know the first 20 messages I get? I can't afford it. Can you send me a copy? Really? $7? It's all businesses and professionals. And yeah, it is sort of 135 million insurance salesmen all trying to sell insurance to each other. But LinkedIn is a pretty good place to go. If you have a business, getting getting all of your employees on LinkedIn and getting them following your business page on LinkedIn is very useful. If you're an individual, it's just a great place to be and build a presence. You can push things that you post on Twitter automatically to LinkedIn. You can post all sorts of content there automatically. You can go out and answer questions. You can join groups. There's a lot of potential marketing opportunities on there, particularly if you are not in marketing. The marketing discussions and groups on LinkedIn are spammed and abused to the point where I don't really see how they're that useful, but almost every other kind of discussion and group on there is very good. YouTube. YouTube gets ignored. YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the internet to Google. As if Google being number one wasn't enough, they're number one and number two. They have almost 500 million users. But look at how many hours a month they spend on there. That's watching videos. I think, and there's also the number that's something like an hour of video is uploaded every second. There's something insane like that. Everybody uses it, and it's video. People love video. They love video. They just love to watch it. They love to work with it. It's embeddable content, right? You can put it on your own website. A lot of good reasons to be on YouTube. However, you do have to produce video to put it there. Google+. This is a weird one. And I don't know quite what to tell people about Google+ at this point. They rose to 100 million users very quickly, partly because to continue using a lot of because every time you signed into any Google tool like Gmail, it started asking you if you wanted to sign up for Google+. That kind of helps you grow your user base really fast. Things you post and that your friends post do appear in Google search results, meaning, and I'll show you this in a few minutes, but if you go into Google+ and you post something and then 500 other people put a +1 on it, and maybe it was about bicycle tires, and then I go and I search for bicycle tires, and a friend of mine, their Google+, they're one of the people who +1'd it, their result is going to show up on the first page for me, as long as there's some decent match. So it's a very easy way to get high rankings, and it also shows, by the way, that social media and search are pretty much completely overlapped at this point. The only audiences I see on there are marketers, geeks, and marketing geeks. I haven't really seen anyone else hit Google+, but you don't really have to. Again, so this is this weird, why I'm so conflicted about it. You don't really have to be a hardcore Google+ user. All you have to do is have an account and have a few friends. And if you do, there's a chance that things they like are going to show up in your search results, because the little +1 button shows up everywhere too. You don't ever have to go to your Google+ page to become a user of Google+, because Google's everywhere, right? Is it for real? I don't know. I'm not sure it matters, because the company that built it has enough money to buy the entire West Coast 3 times over, so they don't really care if it's profitable. They don't even really care where it shows up competitively. They just want it for the data it provides. Quora. How many people here have heard of Quora? Yeah, not that many. Quora is awesome, and you will want to take a look at it as your second social media outlet, especially if you're in any kind of professional services. If you're an accountant, a marketer, a writer, if you're even an athletic coach, a professional coach, anything like that, you're going to want to take a look on Quora. Quora is a question and answer site. That is all it is. You go there and you ask questions and you answer them. That is what the whole site is built for. It integrates with Facebook, meaning that if you post something on Quora, it will show up on your Facebook page if you give it permission. Portent has won 3 clients in 3 months because I go on Quora and answer maybe 1 question every 2 days. So that's pretty significant. Anyone with a question will show up on Quora. I have answered questions on that site because I'm a little bit of an addict, ranging from stuff about social media, search engines, and internet marketing, all the way over to how to write science fiction, which I have no business answering, but I did anyway. And then one more here is Pinterest. I'm sure everybody here has probably heard of Pinterest at this point. Pinterest is the most overly hyped thing in the overly hyped thing, but it is kind of fun. And it's basically just a big pin board online. And you can just take lots of cool graphics and pin them on there. If you're in retail of any kind, or in real estate, or in anything where photos of products matter, you want to try Pinterest. And it is kind of fun, and it's super easy because you just get a little shortcut you put in your web browser, and when you see something you like, you just click it. It grabs all the pictures off that page, and you click Submit, and it's posted. Plus, you can post directly to Facebook and Twitter when you're posting. So it's kind of a way to push content from multiple sources. Instagram. Everyone here has probably heard of Instagram because they just got bought for $2 billion by Facebook. $2 billion. It makes me a little nauseous, really, thinking about that. Because these guys are marketers who never learned to program until they built this. Instagram is just a way to take pictures with your phone and upload them to a service. And they have some cool effects you can apply to the photos. Super easy. Again, you can post photos to Twitter and Facebook directly from it. It's mobile only works on your phone. It's a great tool to support other social media initiatives. And yeah, they did just get bought by Facebook for $2 billion, which may mean it's going to be ruined by Facebook, but it also means it's going to become a fundamental part of how Facebook works. This is the last one, Slideshare. And note as I talk about each of these is sort of the top example of this type of social media site. There are many other sites that do the same thing. These are the ones that I use regularly. I'm not trying to say, they're the be-all and end-all, but they're what I use right now. Slideshare is a place where you can upload your slide presentations. I will take these slides and put them up on Slideshare after today. It's an easy place to put any form of slides. They're then embeddable. You know how you can embed a YouTube video on a web page? They give you this code you can cut and paste. Do the same thing with Slideshare. A huge business audience and a huge audience of people looking to learn. If any part of your sales strategy is teaching in any way, shape, or form, Slideshare is a great place to go. The other thing is they just got acquired by LinkedIn. There's a widget already in LinkedIn where you can have all your Slideshare shows will show up directly on your LinkedIn profile. But now LinkedIn just went ahead and bought them, which is really, really interesting because it's just kind of showing where LinkedIn is looking at going. LinkedIn is highly underestimated in the social media world, but they're actually probably the strongest social media play out there, stronger than Facebook. I mean, they're less likely to go under. They're less likely to get hammered by people deciding to go somewhere else. And acquiring Slideshare helps them because that's the kind of content that fits the audience. So if you think about the different types of sites I just talked about, there are social networks, like Facebook. There are what are called microblogging services, which is really just a big chat room, like Twitter and Google+. There are social content sites like Slideshare and Instagram. And then there's kind of the closed networks that are behind walls like LinkedIn. Those are the big ones I'm going to talk about today.